Hey everybody, welcome to my second video here on Node.js. In the first video we looked at how to set up Node on our systems as well as something called Node Package Manager. Okay, and then we quickly ran a little command line just to confirm that Node and npm were actually really installed on your machine. And we had the right version number. In this video I want to talk a little bit about what Node.js is and what basically it's used for, and this other thing called a V8 engine, okay, that Node sits on top of. So what is Node.js? Well, what Node.js really is it's basically a server-side platform that's built on this thing called Chrome's V8 engine. Now, I'm going to explain in a minute what that V8 engine is, but basically it's a server-side platform that's built on top of something that's developed by Google. It's open source and it's also cross-platform, so Node can run obviously on Windows, it can run on Mac, it can run on Linux, so on and so forth, alright? Now, the purpose of Node.js is really to build mostly server or network related based applications, okay? So you're probably not really going to be using it to build a Windows app, or you might use it to build a client-side application, but for the most part when people use Node.js, they build it more for server-related stuff that serves, incoming requests from a client somewhere, okay? It's generally what you use it for. Now, the thing about Node.js that's kind of unique in comparison to other programming languages out there is it's 100% completely asynchronous by default. Now, what does that mean? What that means is whenever we make a call to a network socket or to a database or something like that from our code, what happens is the thread that was used to make that original request is given back to the operating system and will be used later for some other kind of process, right? Then what happens is once the database has come back with the results, we use what's referred to events to drive the resultant data back to the original caller, okay? So think of a web server and think of a situation where you want to go and get your bank details, say something like that, right? And your bank details are stored in some kind of a database. So when we say it's asynchronous, what will happen is a thread will serve your request to go get your data, right? Your server code will go and fetch the data from the database, but while that's happening, the thread that was originally used to serve your request has moved on to serve another request, right? And then once your information has come back from the database, another thread comes up, picks up the data you've got there and generates an event and sends the resultant data back to you, the caller, okay? We're going to learn more about how that works in Node.js as we go along, but it's just something that Node does very well out of the box. Now, something like .NET, they didn't do this for a very long time, and only in probably the last, 5 years or so, they've brought in this whole asynchronous programming into their framework. But to do it, it wasn't by default. You have to actually opt into it. But the thing with Node is you don't have to. Okay, it's already built that way. Now, the thing about Node that is probably one of the big draws is that it's very, very fast. And the reason why it's very fast is simply because everything that you have is an opt-in. Okay, so something like the .NET Framework or Java or anything that's kind of monolithic in terms of a framework generally has a lot of hoops that you have to jump through before you get to your code, right? There's an authentication module, there's a validation module, whatever there is, okay, based on whatever framework you're using. There's a lot of modules you have to jump through before it actually gets to the code that you care about. But with Node, we don't have that, okay? Node, we literally open up a socket or a port, it could be port 80, and somebody makes a request to our server, we serve the request instantly. We don't have to go through any hoops or anything like that, and that's why it's considered to be very fast, okay? Now, the other thing about Node is that it's a single-threaded system. So what that means is that a thread, or only one thread, can execute your code at a time. There's no such thing as multi-threading. There's no spinning off threads and creating background processes and things like that. Node is not designed for this. It is literally designed for serving network requests, performing an I/O operation in which it will wait, and then it will return some data, right? Now, you would think that that's, not a good draw, because it means it probably doesn't scale very well because you have to wait for one thread at a time. Well, what they actually mean by single-threaded is simply the fact that we don't have background processes, right? But a single thread, like I mentioned before with the asynchronous aspect, can relieve its thread back to the operating system, which means that it scales very well because that thread can be used for another request. Meaning that if you throw more requests at your application, you are more likely to still get a pretty decent throughput as long as your I/O isn't sitting there for a very long time. Okay? If it is, then the person who's making the calls is going to feel like it's very laggy. Okay? As opposed to the application itself being very laggy. We'll get more into I/O and single thread, how the single thread part happens as we go along in this course. Now, the other thing with Node is that you generally use a lot of I/O bound applications. They're generally used for a lot of heavily I/O bound applications and things that you want to build in real time. And that really ties back into the fact that it's very fast and handles I/O very well. Okay, and we generally see it also with single page applications, which are generally built using APIs. Okay, and the last big point is it's just JavaScript, man. I mean, if you've already got JavaScript knowledge, you can jump straight into Node in terms of knowing the syntax. Now, obviously, you have to learn the libraries. There's new concepts you need to understand. But in terms of actually having to learn the language, well, as long as you already know JavaScript, you can pretty much jump straight into this. Now, with all this said, I mentioned that Node is built on something called a V8 engine. So what is this? So what is the V8 engine? Well, basically what it is it's a platform that was built by Google, and the overall objective of it was that they wanted to use JavaScript to build a lot of their applications. So they built an engine that can interpret JavaScript code and compile it down to some native code, i.e. C++ libraries. Okay, so behind the scenes, what actually happens is that you have your JavaScript code that you write, and then as a result of you running Node, right, it will compile your code down to C++ wrappers or C++ native code, and then it will execute. Okay, now C++ and native code is obviously very, very efficient. It's not like JavaScript where in the browser it's interpreted on the run. It's very different to that. It actually is compiled like a lot of other server-side languages, but you get all this for free using this V8 engine. The other thing you get for free using this V8 engine is memory management. Now, we also have this in Chrome as well because it's written by Google. So Chrome manages memory for you as well, whereas a lot of other browsers expect you to be a little bit more careful, but generally they also have their own garbage collection options. But this V8 engine has the same garbage collection system for Node that it uses for Chrome. So it's going to be decent and fairly reliable. Now, the other aspect to the V8 engine as well is it supports both ECMAScript 5 and 6. And so it's up to date with the latest trends of JavaScript. So in this course, what we're going to be doing a lot of in the early going is we're going to be learning some of this ECMA 5 and ECMAScript stuff so that we can make, we can write the best Node code possible before we actually get into writing Node server applications, okay? And the other thing that the V8 engine allows for is modular programming. So we can import modules. Very similar if you followed my Angular course. You've got modules in that. It's the same deal here with Node. Okay? So that's it. Fin. So that's all I wanted to say about Node and the V8 engine. Now what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to jump back over the code and I'm going to quickly show you how to run a sample application. So let's get to that. So what I have in front of me right now is what is referred to as a command line, also known as a terminal on Mac, or just a command prompt in Windows. I'm pretty sure it's also known as a terminal in Linux. So what I'm going to do first, as my first sample to show you how to write a Node program, is I'm going to actually write one while on the command line, okay? And then after that, I'll show you how to write the same program by just basically using a text editor and then running it from the command line, okay? So let's get started. Now, if I want to run a program from the command line, the first thing I need to do is I need to just type Node and press Enter or return, right? And then, I'm not sure if you can see this, but there's this little right arrow on the next line. This, if you're seeing this, this means that now you've got Node running and it's ready for you to give a command, or in the case of programming, just basically some code, okay? So what I'm going to do just to quickly show that this works is I'm just going to go console.log and I'll say hello world, right? And I'll just press return, and as you can see, hello world comes out. Now it says undefined. The reason why it says undefined is generally because it was looking for it was expecting you to have a variable set to this, but we didn't, so it just says undefined. Now the other things you can do is you can run basically any command you can think of. So I can go A is equal to 5, and it'll echo out 5. I can go B is equal to 6, right? It'll echo 6. And then I can go A plus B, that'll echo out 11. You know, I can go A times B, that'll echo out 30. You know, I can reassign values, so A is now 2. And then I can go A times B again, and the value changes. And you can do all kinds of things, right, the command line. Now, to be honest with you, you're probably not going to be doing this all that much, right? Generally, you'll just write a program, right, and test it out. But sometimes this can be handy if you just want to test maybe a line of code that you think might be right, and you just want to confirm that it's correct, right? It's kind of like a little playground. You know, you might say, I want to prove that 4 mod 2 is equal to 0. It happens to be true, right? But I want to say that 4 mod 3 is equal to 0. Well, I find that that's false, okay? So that's kind of the only time I really use the Node command line to do any kind of Node development. Generally, I'll just write a program. So, how do we quit out of this? Well, let's go Control Q. Sorry. I thought it was Control Q. Command Q. No, that closes the terminal. It might be Control C. Yeah, sorry, Control C. Sorry, I'm getting confused a couple of times with different programs. But yeah, so I just press Control C to get out of it. You press it a couple of times and you're back to the command prompt. Alright, so that's how you can run Node instructions from the command line just by typing Node, okay? But what you're normally going to see is you're going to actually write a program yourself. Alright, so what I've got open here is a program called Visual Studio Code. Now, if you don't know what this is what I'm going to be using for the whole course. So I'll put a link in the description of where to download this from, because it's supported across Windows, Mac, and Linux. Okay, so it's definitely you can use this. So what I'm going to do for this first program is I'm just going to echo out "Hello World." Okay. And this is just to give you an idea of how to do it. And because this is JavaScript, I'm going to save this file as a JavaScript file, right? So I'm going to come into my documents. I'm going to come down to Node.js. I've got my course here, and I'm just going to save it as hello -world.js, okay, and save. And the other cool thing about this program is that when you put the .js on the end, it's detected it's JavaScript and it starts giving you color coding, right? And not only that, it gives what's called IntelliSense. If you've used Visual Studio Code before, you will already know this. Now I've got a program running there. I just need to run it at the command line. So how do we do this? Well, first, I'm just going to make sure I'm in the right folder, which I am. There's my hello world.json. All I need to do is type node and then the name of the file. So in this case, it's hello-world. Now, you can include the .js if you want, but you don't have to. I'm not going to. So I'm going to run this. And as you can see, hello world was emitted here. Okay. And that's your first program in Node. Alright, it's nothing major, but you can see that you've been able to successfully execute something using the Node runtime or the V8 engine, and you've just written some sample JavaScript, which is pretty easy and straightforward. So I'm going to end the video here. In the next video, what we're going to start doing is we're going to start looking at, some new JavaScript based stuff using ECMAScript 5 and 6, and we'll try and brighten up our skills in that area and get a good knowledge for classes and all these other little things over the course of many videos. So it's probably going to take a few videos to get us up to speed with ECMAScript 5 and 6, but once we do that, we can really start building really solid Node programs. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video.